The clatter of cups and the hum of casual conversation filled the air, as the scent of freshly brewed coffee lingered like a warm embrace, mingling with the soft chatter of morning regulars. It was an ordinary day at a popular café near Fort Carson, Colorado, where locals and military families shared a peaceful moment, sipping on their favorite drinks and swapping stories. But as the sun streamed in through the large windows, painting the room with golden rays, an incident began to unfold, one that would forever be etched in the memories of those present. At a corner table sat a young black soldier, quietly enjoying his coffee. His uniform was impeccable, every crease sharp, every patch a testament to the years he'd dedicated to serving his country. Lost in thought, perhaps contemplating the day ahead, he was a picture of composure and calm. But not everyone in the café shared the same admiration for him. A woman, seated a few tables away, couldn't seem to look away from him. Her eyes narrowed, her irritation growing with every passing second. The tension was building. Finally, unable to hold her frustration any longer, she spoke up, her voice cutting through the room like a blade, sharp and demanding. "Excuse me," she said loudly, her words drawing the attention of nearby patrons. "Do you really think you should be wearing that uniform?" The soldier, unfazed, looked up. His gaze met hers, calm and composed, like someone trying to understand why she would ask such a thing. There was no anger in his eyes, just curiosity. The café around them fell into a sudden hush as the other customers sensed the shift in the atmosphere. Whispers faded, and the clink of cutlery ceased. All eyes turned toward the exchange that was about to unfold. The woman leaned forward, her voice dripping with disdain, each word deliberate, aimed to hurt. "It's people like you who make a mockery of that uniform. What could you possibly know about serving this country?" Her words hung in the air, heavy with accusation. The murmurs from the crowd began to grow, some patrons exchanging uncomfortable glances, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats. But the soldier? His posture remained firm, unyielding. His eyes, though, betrayed a flicker of pain, quickly masked by his calm demeanor. He didn't respond immediately, letting the weight of her words fill the space between them, giving them the room to sink in. Encouraged by the silence, the woman pressed on. "I just don't see how someone like you could understand what it means to defend this country. People like you don't belong in that uniform." The café, now fully captivated by the scene, fell into an unbearable silence. Even the barista, who had been busy steaming milk, froze mid-motion. The tension in the room was so thick, you could almost feel it pressing down on your chest. The soldier finally set his cup down, his chair scraping against the floor like a gavel in a courtroom. Taking a deep breath, he stood. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, but there was an undeniable authority in it that demanded attention. "Ma'am," he said, locking eyes with her, his tone firm yet measured. "You don't know me. You don't know my story, or why I wear this uniform. But since you've asked, maybe it's time everyone here heard it." The entire café fell silent. Even the usual chatter seemed to disappear as people leaned in, eager to hear what he would say. The soldier continued, his voice steady and unwavering. "I enlisted right out of high school. I was 18, fresh out of a small town in Texas. My parents taught me the value of hard work and instilled in me a deep respect for this country's ideals. For me, joining the military wasn't about recognition. It was about protecting the freedoms that so many take for granted." His words cut through the silence like a knife, and the room was completely still, save for the soldier's steady voice. Even those who had been avoiding the confrontation were now listening intently. "I've served 2 tours overseas," he continued, including one in Afghanistan. "I lost friends, brave men and women who didn't care about the color of my skin or where I came from. They cared about one thing, whether I had their back. And I did. Every single time." The emotion in his voice was palpable now, as he shared a moment that had clearly stayed with him. "There's one mission I'll never forget," he said, his gaze drifting as if reliving the memory. "We were called to a village after a bomb went off. There were families torn apart, homes reduced to rubble. And in the midst of that devastation, I found a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Her parents didn't make it, but she did. Because I carried her out of the rubble with my own hands. He paused, his eyes sweeping across the room. The crowd was spellbound, hanging on to every word. Do you know what she said to me? She didn't thank me for being a soldier. She thanked me for being kind, for saving her life. His voice caught for a moment, and the room felt even quieter. That moment reminded me why I do what I do. The woman, visibly pale now, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The bravado she had earlier worn so confidently had been replaced with visible shame. But the soldier wasn't finished. He pressed on, his voice growing stronger, more resolute. So when you say I don't belong in this uniform, you're not just insulting me. You're insulting every person I've served with. You're insulting the sacrifices we've made, the lives we've saved, and the values we've fought to uphold. He stood taller now, his posture proud. This uniform isn't about who wears it. It's about what it represents. And I've earned the right to wear it. The café erupted into applause. An older man near the counter, wearing a Vietnam War veteran's hat, stood and nodded toward the soldier. Thank you for your service, he said, his voice thick with emotion. One by one, others chimed in, adding their voices of support. Thank you. We're proud of you. Even the barista, who had been frozen in place, stepped forward, offering the soldier a fresh cup of coffee. This one's on the house, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman, now flushed with embarrassment, looked down. She was silent for a long moment before speaking again. I'm sorry, she said, her voice softer than before. I didn't know. I shouldn't have assumed. The soldier gave a small nod, his expression kind but firm. Apology accepted, he replied, before picking up his coffee and walking out of the café with his head held high. For a moment, the room remained still. The weight of his words lingered in the air, like an unspoken lesson. Slowly, conversations began again, but something had changed. The atmosphere was different. Everyone in that café had just witnessed something profound, a reminder of what true courage, humility, and respect really look like. If this story moved you as much as it moved us, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Hit that bell icon to stay updated with more powerful stories that inspire and challenge your perspective.